What's going on, everyone? Back for another episode of the Club and Sub podcast. Our resident co host, John, is out entertaining the wife, I believe, tonight. So I will be taking over the hosting duties for, I think, my second or third time. So you guys might have to give me a bit of a break. But we got my guy, Lou Betya, filling in here to guest spot on the show. How's it going tonight, Lou?
Just ready for this banger of a card. A lot of just keeping in mind that there's going to be a couple decisions on this card with some of these wide lines. Got Texas judging that is baked into some of my picks tonight, but it's a great main card, really interesting undercard. I'm ready to attack it, man.
Absolutely. As always, we got my guy Danny Lags. What are you thinking about the cards, Lags?
I mean, like you guys touched on, it's stacked, absolutely 14 fights, but kind of like what you said, Lou, there's a lot of big favorites on this card, and I think a lot of them aren't too trustworthy. I mean, we'll get into it for sure. So I'm excited.
Absolutely. And you guys always know this podcast is brought to y'all by betonline.ag. You can use promo code CLUBSUB for a 100% bonus on your first deposit as well there. So check them out, support them, support the show. They're usually one of the earliest movers in terms of putting out lines and general props on the market. You get all of your fun regionals there as well. So show your boys some support. Head over there to betonline.ag. And as you guys know, we got a big card to kick off here, 14 fight slate in the fine state of Texas, which is not exactly known for the greatest judging in the world. So I'm assuming that will come into play and potentially some of our breakdowns here throughout the card. But we'll kick it off right at the bottom. As always, we got Phil Hawes taking on Deron Winn. Do you want to kick us off, Legs?
Yeah, it's a fight we definitely touched on before, and it's kind of interesting to me is why they're trying to keep this fight booked. I mean, this is the third time I believe that it's been booked. I think they're just trying to get Hawes a win, to be completely honest with you. I don't really rate Winn all that much. I mean, obviously he's a decent wrestler in his own right, but the guy's short for the division. We touched on it in every podcast. I just don't think the guy's much. His cardio is not great to begin with. Not that Hawes is either. To me, I think this is just a decent spot for Hawes. But again, it's Hawes minus 250. It's not like, this is one of the bigger favorites that we're talking about that I'm not really trusting in the parlay. I think this is an easy pass, but I think Hawes should get it done.
All right, Lou, got anything for me here, bro?
I mean, I'm with him on the Hawes side here. I don't know, outside of a flash KO, I don't know how Wynn's going to win this one. I mean, I don't trust Hawes cardio, but I don't trust any of the improvements that Winn has allegedly made. Hawes KO is sitting at, I believe, plus 150. I think that's a good spot. I like that fight doesn't go as well. I think that you're going to have two fatigued guys by the end of the second round if it gets that far. But I think Hawes can get him out of their first round. But the Hawes KO plus 150 really cuts that price down a lot. And I'm not even convinced this fight's going to happen, to be honest. Like, I wish there was a bet on will it go off, because we've been hearing things the last couple of days. Like, we're not sure if Wynn's even, like, I keep hearing that Winn may not be taking this fight. He says on like his Instagram and stuff that he is, but I don't know. I'm not 100% convinced it does, but I'm on the Hawes KO side. Seems a good way to start the card.
Yeah, I think that's a good look too. That's kind of where I'm looking to as well. I think I did actually play the Hawes KO in the original booked matchup. My thing is, like, I think Hawes has like all the tools, but he's just not a guy I also want to trust like over minus 200, primarily for the durability concerns. He historically hasn't been a great, cardio king. I do think he's shown some improvements in the cardio in some of his recent fights, which needs to be noted. But nonetheless, I'm, still not willing to put my sparring stamp and say that the guy's Lance Armstrong, by any means in there as well. So I think that all needs to be taken into context, when you're laying over minus 200 on Phil Hawes. But it's like, he's going to have massive size advantages here. I mean, Winn is 5'6" at 185. And, I'm not like a huge overt size guy, but I mean, you don't see stuff like this glaring of a guy being that small. And I do think Hawes is the biggest hitter that he's fought to date. Obviously, both guys come from strong collegiate wrestling backgrounds, but it's one of those spots where we do often see, two wrestlers or two strong grapplers go out there and do get out on the feet, because I don't think Deron Wynn's going to be able to have, the wrestling success he did on Antonio Hoyo against a guy like Phil Hawes or anything. So yeah, I'm more so on the Hawes early side. I do see some potential merit though to to win just based on activity. If he doesn't get knocked out, he will come forward. He will throw his hands, but obviously in doing so, he's going to have to walk through the fire. So maybe if he can survive, not get clipped, if Hawes potentially slows down, maybe there's some volume-based decision merit to win. I guess theoretically he could clip Hawes, but I don't think he's much of a hitter personally. So I wouldn't completely count out Duran win in this spot by any means, but yeah, I'm more so on the Hawes KO side with Lou as well. So next fight of the night, we got Kyle Daukaus taking on Roman Dolidze. Lags, why don't you kick it off here, bro?
Yeah, so I guess this is actually one of the more like the favorites I would actually trust on the card. Not many of them on the card, but yeah, I actually think Daukaus is pretty much better basically everywhere outside of pure strength, and even that pure strength, I think for Dolidze that advantage is gone within the first about half of a round. Like I don't think much of Dolidze in general. His wrestling's okay, his striking is very low output. I think Daukaus, if he doesn't get clipped here, really, I don't see why he shouldn't be able to win this fight at a high clip.
Yeah, I actually think there could be a little bit of value on Dolidze personally, now that I think he's all the way up to like plus 210 or so. Like, I don't disagree with a lot of what you said. I think Daukaus is obviously the cleaner boxer. His pacing's more consistent. He's the better submission grappler, but we have seen Daukaus struggle in some grinding intensive fights at points. He got stuck against the fence in the Phil Hawes fight. He got stuck on bottom against Brendan Allen. He did get hurt by Brendan Allen as well. And I guess probably the primary issue, I shouldn't say issue necessarily, but concern I've had with Daukaus is that I still don't think he's like a great athlete by any means. And I do think he's probably going to get knocked out at some point. And, Roman does crack and hit hard, but there's obviously a lot of red flags on the Dolidze side. His decision-making has been very questionable in quite a few outings, especially the Trevin Giles fight. He probably should have won that fight if he's not going out there and, going for leg locks and stuff and conceding positions. His cardio has not exactly been great either. So definitely a ton of red flags on the Dolidze side, but I do think he technically does have knockout paths here. He technically does have potential grinding paths if Daukaus just like couldn't deal with the strength or couldn't create space. I do think it's plausible, which is why I'm more so on the opinion that, I think Dolidze is probably the side at the number. Am I clamoring to lay it? Probably not, but I know Daukaus is everybody's favorite this week. So I have just maybe a slightly different opinion. I do think he wins the fight at probably a decent to moderate clip, but from a betting perspective, I personally wouldn't touch it on Daukaus over minus 200 and look more to the Dolidze side. What do you think, Lou?
There was this, I can't remember. I'm in the Philly area, so obviously I like Daukaus. There was this pro wrestler in one of these local leagues that used to yell to the crowd, "Now it's time for my finishing move," and here it is. And I feel like that's Dolidze's fight IQ. That's how he calls out his moves. Other than having a power advantage, I don't know where he's better. I mean, Daukaus is going to have a volume advantage. He's definitely a better grappler. He's durable. I know what you're saying about he's going to get KO'd. I don't think this is the guy to do it, to be honest. Dolidze's wins have not aged very well either at this point. I mean, you look at the guys he's beat, and it's, this Staropoli win is, I mean,
that's the best one. That's the best win he's got.
John Allen, not Alon Patrick, but Allen. These aren't great wins. I mean, the Trevin Giles, I don't rate him that highly either. But Daukaus' decision is sitting at plus 150. I think 8 out of 10 times that's how this ends on the Daukaus end. I don't think, maybe the late submissions there if Dolidze really gasses, but I could see Daukaus cruising with 30-27 here, avoiding the power. And if he's up 2 rounds in the third, just take him down. Just avoid the Hail Mary shot altogether. So at plus 150, again, much like the Hawes thing, you're cutting down that money line a little bit. I like the plus odds for what I feel is just the most likely outcome of this fight if you ran it 100 times. So I'm going to play Daukaus' decision. He's a parlay piece. I don't really like making parlays with huge money lines. It's just not not really my thing to do, but right. I think he feels like the safest favorite. I mean, I guess we're going to get to another fight with what is a perceived safe favorite, but and I have Philly bias here too. So of course I'm on the Daukaus side.
I was actually, to to comment on the decision prop is nice. I was looking. FanDuel has him by sub or decision, which is like minus 160, which I still think is a good price for that.
Well, I don't think he's getting a knockout. So
right. Yep.
All right, on to the next one. We got Cody Stamen. I think he is the most widely lined favorite on this card at over minus 500 over the senior citizen Eddie Wineland. I guess I'll kick this one off. I mean, Cody Stamen should win this fight. I think the UFC kind of knows what they're doing with it. Eddie Wineland's been in the UFC for a second now. Probably don't want him getting brutally knocked out anymore, which I do think actually is sneaky possible considering John Castaneda knocked him out, who's not a big hitter by any stretch of the imagination. And, Cody Stamen's hands have improved, but at least historically, Stamen more of your grinding wrestler base type of guy. But I do think it's interesting, at least from a stylistic perspective. Wineland does stuff takedowns at 93% in the UFC. So it's not like he's a guy who's going out there and getting ragdolled really by anybody. And he's fought a lot of strong wrestlers in the past. I think the guy to have the most success on him was Uriah Faber back in the day. But it's just one of those scenarios where I think you have a washed fighter. Cody Stamen is just better, assuming he doesn't get clipped. I think he can still outwork Eddie Wineland on the feet, who kind of works in that weird squared stance style, which just leaves him open to straight punches constantly. So I think Cody Stamen can outbox him. How much wrestling success he can have, I guess we'll see, which is why, in my opinion, I cannot lay, minus 500 on a guy whose primary path is wrestling against a guy who stuffs takedowns at 93%. That's just a principled stance for me. And obviously the fact of Wineland being washed is incredibly baked into this line, because of what I will say, skill set for skill set. If Wineland is not washed, I still don't think Cody Stamen is minus 500 in the fight, but it's the case. So you have to factor that in as well. So, if you want to parlay Stamen, I still think he wins at a high clip. I just don't think you're really getting any meat on the bone, at 85% implied, just based on some of the stylistic considerations. But that's just my take, at least. What do you think, Legs?
Yeah, again, like what we were talking about with the safe favorites, I do think, he is a safe favorite here. But again, it's like, I don't think you're getting any value at all parlaying Cody Stamen. And it's like, we're going to talk about like value, this and that. So if you're trying to parlay him, like, again, is his finishing upside that highly here? Like, I don't really think that Wineland is that washed that a guy like Cody Stamen will be able to finish him. But yeah, that's kind of where we're talking about, like with the safe parlay piece and whatnot. Yeah, for me, it's a pass easily at the number. Should be an easy win for Cody.
Lou, what do you got?
Let's make it 3 for 3. And I got to say this, if the fight stays standing for 15 minutes, like I think it could, like, does Stamen really look 550? Will he look 550 in a strike contest? No. I'm not going to play this, but I like recommending, at least if you want to, for the degenerates out there, like everybody that's friends with me in life, fight to start round 3 is minus 170 on 5 dimes. It's minus 235 on FanDuel. I just don't trust that Stamen is going to finish him. I think this could be a lopsided decision, but if it's on the feet primarily, like, Stamen's not some high volume power puncher. Wineland can just at least hang in there. I think Stamen's going to go for takedowns. Like, that's going to kill a lot of the clock. I think this goes the distance, but Wineland is he's washed. So I don't want to put out that the late finish is impossible, but fight to start round 3 minus 235 doesn't seem unreasonable. I'm not going to get there, I don't think, but it's not a horrible look for this. Do you expect a round 1 knockout here? I'm not,
What's Stamen by decision? Just curious. I didn't even look at it.
Stamen by decision is minus, so you already hate it, minus 130 to 125, depending on where you go.
Yeah, it looks like.
I guess would you rather take that than the fight starts round 3?
Well, then I got to root against Eddie Wineland. Like, no, I'm not going to play this fight at all. Like, I don't think there's a lot of value, but and Stamen, like, to his, I don't want to say to his credit, it's not like he took any damage last fight. He didn't have time to take any damage. So, we haven't seen Wineland in a while. So, like, we don't know what like the rest is going to do to all these guys, but I'm just not comfortable even getting involved in this one at all. I think
fair.
there's way better fight on a 14 fight card, way better fights to target, even though there's a couple that I don't like to target at all here.
Yeah, I think we're kind of all in agreement there. We'll bring it to the next fight. We got Danny Chavez versus Ricardo Ramos. I'll let you kick this one off, Lou.
So initially I looked at this and I thought the line was wide. And then I dug in a little bit and I'm like, man, I mean, the Ramos Algeo fight. I think it's funny. I think that fight's starting to age better and better for Ramos because Algeo is showing like what a dog is. Algeo, another Philly guy, by the way, sort of lives near Philly, but I don't know what to make of Chavez. I mean, the leg kicks are strong, but I don't think he just lunges for punches. Like I think Ramos can piece him up volume wise. I mean, I think Ramos is a good parlay piece. I don't see him getting a finish. So that decision prop, which I'm looking it up now, I didn't think it was. I wasn't like overly overwhelmed with it, but the Ramos by decision, it's -110. That's not too bad. But if you've ever watched any of my shows, there's a special bet that I give away every week called the Yam Bag Special, which is a point deduction bet. I know Danny knows this bet. I don't know if Luke, you know that this is like my it's what I'm known for, no matter how many bets I'll get right in a row. But I did see like a lot of ball shots on tape. And there's really not a lot of science.
No, I like
to this.
it.
There's not a lot of science to this bet, but when I like go through the tape, their last 5 fights, I think I saw like 12 to 13 ball shots. I mean, plus 2,000 odds. Why not? Why not? So I lean Ramos decision. I think -110 is pretty reasonable. And I think Chavez is really tough. So I think he can hang in there. And Ramos hasn't shown me that he's like an elite finisher at any level, to be honest. But yeah, -110 for the decision if you want to get involved, and plus 2,000 for the play some Yam Bag Yahtzee with this one.
Yeah, so I think this one's reasonably right. I think it might be just a tad high on Ramos just because he hasn't been the most consistent guy in the world in terms of his output. You know, he kind of plays a more, I don't want to say he's low output by any means, but I think he plays like more of a methodical outside, more point fighting, and then, you know, sniper power, big kick, spinning, you know, back elbow, that type of thing.
Yeah.
So that kind of concerns me a tad against a guy like Chavez, who, you know, is a tough dude and will hang in there. But I do think, nonetheless, that he's going to be at a decent size discrepancy. I do think from a technical perspective that Chavez is at a deficiency. I also think that Ramos is the better submission grappler. They're both black belts. I don't know if Chavez has been submitted. I mean, you guys might have to check me on that.
He has once. Yeah.
He has once. Okay.
Yeah. Guillotine.
And Ramos has shown to be a consistent wrestler in certain spots with a pretty sound back take. So I wouldn't be shocked if he could submit Chavez. I just haven't seen enough of Chavez on bottom, you know, outside of him getting out wrestled by Jared Gordon, who is a brown belt under Danaher, which needs to be noted. But Gordon was more kind of lay and pray in the guard. He wasn't like overtly looking to pass, where it's pretty much the opposite from Ramos, where his control per takedown is actually not very good, despite his strong like offensive wrestling metrics of getting it. I think only 22% of Ramos's fight time has been spent grappling. So I think he's more of a kind of back take transitional based specialist than like a top control player. So I think he might be able to get into dominant positions on Danny Chavez in some transitions, which I think he's live to submit potentially, but lots of questions there. Can he hold down Danny Chavez? I'm not 100% sure about that, but all things considered, I do think Ramos is still probably the better minute winner because I do think he's the better striker, he's the better wrestler, and he's the better grappler. But Ramos has just been a funny guy for me because I've been pretty high on him historically and saying that this guy has like a ridiculous ceiling, but it just hasn't like fully came to fruition yet or translated. Will it eventually? I don't know. I mean, he still is really young. He's only 26 years old. But I think it's an okay fight for him. But I don't think you can ever count on a guy like Danny Chavez, who still is a tough dude at the end of the day, who more than likely will be in there for all 15 minutes. And lastly, I think a fun little quick narrative note. Ramos actually did not do this camp out at Team Alpha Male and did do it back in Brazil. So I don't know if that plays into anyone's opinions, but I was listening to that too. I think he said something just due to family issues or whatnot, but pick is Ramos probably by decision, but I do think he's potentially sneaky live for a submission. What do you think, Legs?
Yeah, similar to Lou, I actually was going into tape and still somewhat coming out of tape. I kind of think Chavez is the side, but it's also like I think it's also a value trap at the same time. Just it's more like a trap by the numbered spot because like I think Chavez himself is fairly limited. Like touched on decent leg kick, decent counter game, but fairly low output. He doesn't really have an offensive. I mean, he has a decent offensive wrestling game, but I don't think he can do it consistently because I think he's just going to gas himself out doing so. And then on the Ramos side, like you touched on, I don't think he's low output, but it's not great. Like I don't love it to like a minus 300 extent because also in the wrestling aspect, he's more of like a body lock, like you touched on. He's a body lock going for the neck kind of guy. He's not a guy out here shooting singles, shooting doubles. So I feel like Chavez can compete, but it's also like I could see Ramos being able to just get in the back, get in a sub real quick. So to me, I think if this goes 15 minutes, I think Chavez can at least just make this competitive. So at plus 250, I might end up having a small shot on it myself.
All right. Legs. Hashtag value boys on Chavez, maybe. Well,
I don't know. I don't know if I'll end up getting there, but yeah.
We will see. All right. Next fight, people's main event. Gloria De Paula versus Maria Oliveira. Legs, kick it off for us.
This is actually the 1-800-Gamblers fight on the card for me. I'm surprised that Oliveira actually has a UFC job. I don't know how she got one in the first place. I don't think this girl is much of anything. I mean, the same thing could really be said for Gloria De Paula. I think her striking's okay, not great. I think she can get the fight to the clinch here, but her wrestling's not great. Again, like I think this is just going to be a sloppy, low-level women's MMA fight that minus 250 isn't really justified. This is, again, one of your bigger favorites that isn't trustworthy. But it's just another pass. Like I don't think Oliveira is UFC level at all.
What do you think, Lou?
Well, she did beat Bell Beats. Solid win against the Bell Beats. Yeah, I'm not betting this at all. But Oliveira it was like legalized murder against Marina Rodriguez. The nicest thing you can say about her is she looked okay against Tabitha Ricci. Like she looked tolerable. But from I don't know why this came into my head, but it almost feels like you have another fighter with like a really weird, like a 6-4 record as a big favorite. That's like, are they? I know it's a different story with like the records, but like, are they trying to kind of build her up? Like they're trying to build Sam Hughes up a little bit. Like take somebody who on paper has like this kind of mediocre record and be like, yeah, but she's improving. Like, I think she has a striking advantage. If she goes to the takedowns, she should land every single one. But I also don't know how you bet this and feel good about. Like I work for a living. You guys work for a living. I don't want to spend any of my work money on this. You crazy? Like, and somehow this isn't even the the most bandied about women's fight that we have on the card. But I'm laying off it. I mean, DePaula or favorite or pass, but like pass.
Yeah, it's definitely not a fighter I'm clamoring to lay, minus 230 on Gloria De Paula or whatever either. If you guys have been listening to this podcast for a while, we have not been the biggest Gloria De Paula supporters in the past. I did play bays against her. I think I ended up laying off Belbita, thankfully, but I came very close to betting her. But I think from some perspective, I do think the line is largely actually justified here. I just think she's a better striker than Oliveira, who's pretty content to play the back foot despite my issues with De Paula's defense and hitability. I still thought she actually showed a lot better things against Belbita than I was anticipating. Like Belbita, I think landed, upwards of 90 strikes on her, but actually she only landed at a 30% clip. So still obviously eating a lot of shots, not good, but she also avoided a shitload of shots too. And I thought that her overall footwork and cognizance just seemed a bit better than what we've seen in the past. I think she's just a more sharper, a bit more technical, more consistent to dictate the pace, go forward, which we know is what wins women's fights largely at a pretty sizable clip. And then the main issues with DePaula historically have obviously been, with her getting taken down and grounded. But Oliveira has shown no wrestling components really at all. So that's why I don't have a ton of pause for DePaula, I guess, in that realm. Nonetheless, in whatever weird, MMA microcosm we live in, that Oliveira does decide to put on her singlet, and and DePaula does get put on her back. Am I going to feel, great about it if I had a minus 230 ticket on DePaula? Probably not, because her get up game is just not very good at all either. So I think DePaula around a minus 200 favorite actually is probably correct. Should you bet it? No, you probably shouldn't if you're going to do anything better by points. But I was even looking at like Bet Online today, like she's like minus 175 by points at Bet Online. I mean, they're pretty off from the market, but I think the majority of the market's like minus 135, minus 140. It's like even there, I mean, you're not getting any value. I mean, you're still in chalk on her decision line. It's like you could probably talk me into it at plus money because I do think she's going to win minutes in this fight. I do think she's the better fighter. But at favorite money, to your point, Lags, low level fight. I mean, just chalk here, just historically probably not a profitable option long term. But I do think she should win this fight at a decent clip at least. So. All right, on to our second people's main event in a high-level women's fight. We got resident Canadian Jasmine Jasudavicius taking on Natalia Silva. I think out of all the fights, this is probably the one I did the least amount of tape on, just primarily because I actually did watch a decent amount of Silva, but it's so hard to cap these girls' fights who are coming off of reasonably long layoffs, especially from the Brazilian regional scene, who are in their early to mid 20s. It's like, I have no idea where this girl is at right now. Like she could have gotten a lot better in a lot of ways. Like she's kind of in like the Melissa Gatto category for me, where we just have that long layoff. She looked really, really bad in certain capacities before on the regionals. Obviously, snagged up a ton of arm bars and stuff, but automatically, just even before watching tape, you run through the girls' Tapology, armbar, 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 armbar. Like automatic, that's just like red flags, fireworks for me. I don't like the general armbar archetypes, at least at a certain level. But I will say though, on the feet, she is aggressive. She is enthusiastic. She does throw strikes. She's not technical, in any capacity. So I think there's might be some merit to her there, because Jasudavicius, despite being a much bigger girl, her defense is dog shit. I don't think anybody would disagree with me there. But I do think Jasudavicius deserves to be a favorite based on the size dynamic and physicality advantages. I do think she can probably just lock Oliveira down on top. I'm not just saying that because she did that to Kay Hansen, but also because Kay Hansen, I would actually say, is a much better grappler than this other girl. I mean, she submitted better girls before. She submitted Jinyu Frey, who's a more competent grappler, in my opinion, than this Silva girl. So I think Jasudavicius can probably big brother her. Does she deserve to be an over 2-1 favorite? Probably not, because also when you look at the recency bias potential too, the girl was just an over plus 200 dog to Kay Hansen. So she goes out there and wins. Now she's a big favorite or what? I mean, we've seen kind of this rock'em sock'em back and forth thing on these lines before, which just like auto scares me, like even like without the style dynamic or any factor like that, because we have seen spots like this before, crazy undervalued, now crazy overvalued. For me, I just don't really know what to make of this Silva girl outside of, kitchen sink back player when her wrestling sucks. When she can't get her takedown, she just flops to her back. If she can't get those guard stubs, she's just kind of more willing to be enthusiastic on the feet. No defense, no technique. Could she make this a scrappy fight? Could she make this a close fight? Could she potentially win? Yeah, I would be more inclined to take a shot on her if I was to bet the fight, just because, once again, I don't know if I can justify Jasudavicius over minus 200 over many girls in the division, coupled with some recency bias. But I do think Jasudavicius probably 60 to 65% is probably about fair. What do you think, Legs?
Yeah, that's kind of the thing. I've been seeing a lot of dog shots on Silva this week, and I don't really get it. I just think it's kind of a lot of hoping and wishing that, like, yeah, she is improving in that time off, because you're just not seeing a lot of it on tape. At least I'm not. To me, I do think, like you said, I think Jazz Devicious can big brother her. I think she can just get top time here and is able to just ride her out to a decision. And I actually played the fight goes the distance at -180 for a unit and a half. I just don't think there's a
Okay.
ton of finishing upside, and it's all on the Silva side.
I don't hate that. What do you think, Lou?
Yep.
Well, I mean, Danny and I were talking about this earlier today. Like somebody I don't get the love that I'm seeing for Silva here, and it's like we're getting in. I see people do this group thing on MMA Twitter sometimes where you make assumptions like that Silva, well, because she hasn't fought in so long, we're assuming that she's improved so drastically. But yet it seems like the only thing people are banking on is armbar from guard. Like that's her path to victory. And I mean, you can't really, it's hard to bank on that in a fight. So, I mean, I think Fight Goes is a great look, to be honest. I got to be honest. I didn't really like how Jasuda Vicious looked in the third round against Kay Hansen, who was not even fighting in her natural weight class. I didn't like the cardio. The striking was okay, but like it's not like Kay Hansen,
She was losing the boxing to Hansen, who's not a great boxer.
I mean, and she faded, and she started to fade. So like, if this hits the ground, I guess the sub's live. If it stays on the feet, it's just I'd flip a coin. I don't think there's like a huge, like you're saying, Silva's more aggressive. Jasuda Vicious, I could be more technical, but to me, it just comes down to: do I want the fighter that's had this will be her fourth fight in 15 months versus one that hasn't fought in 2.5 years? Also, Dan brought up in chat. It seems like Silva's training with Paulo Costa, so like no buys for me on that one. Like no buys. Like there's no way I can take that side. But this is a pass for me. I like the time props more than I like the side. The thing is if you're gonna take Silva, I think the finish prop makes sense. I don't see how she wins a decision. If this fight hits the ground, she loses every minute, except the minute she wins the fight. She loses every minute. Like Jasuda Vicious should be the minute winner here, but again, -2 over -200. Like no.
And
Nope.
then to add to your point there, so Silva finish only is +150.
Okay, I mean, but it's hard to
Right.
you can look for.
No, I'm saying
tape
like
out
for
there,
those.
but
I'm saying for those people that are on the Silva side, like I would
yeah,
much
for
rather
those
like
crazy
I don't really
people.
see her winning. Yeah, I don't see her winning a decision here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, and I don't see Jasuda Vicious winning by finish. So I mean, but there's no way for me on this one. Just so you guys know, I don't like to say I have no bets. So to make it right, I do have a bet on every single fight going forward. So
all right, perfect.
full,
Because I
full
think
DGen mode.
I think we spent way too much time on that fight. Nonetheless, we'll move forward. We got Jeremiah Wells taking on Court McGee. I'll kick this one off. I was an earlier mover on this one. I played McGee at +105. I think he's now sitting more market wide around -120, -125. And honestly, I still think he probably has a bit of value, even as a slight favorite. It's weird with Court for me because I've still been more of a Court truther over the years, and I just don't think the guy gets enough respect. He's obviously 37, which I think is the primary merit that people have taken against him in many spots, and it's obviously something you have to factor in. Fighters in their late 30s, we know the cliff can come and it can just come and it's not good. And even prior to his recent 2-fight win streak, he lost a shitload of fights in between there, but styles, matchups, and everything do make fights. And my general take on this fight is that I think Jeremiah Wells is the better athlete. He has more power. He has more explosiveness, but his pacing is weird. I've seen him be very low output in certain affairs. And outside of that, then he's just like bum rushing guys and then clipping them or hurting them or, doing that type of deal. But in terms of being or at least is shown to be a more consistent winner, over the course of a longer sample size, over much better competition, I mean, it's Court McGee. I mean, at the end of the day, the guy went strike for strike with Sean Brady, forced a split. Should the fight have been a split? Probably not, but still competitive, nonetheless, landed a lot of good shots of his own. And we've seen him compete with a lot of other guys in the feet outside of his general volume. We know one thing's very consistent with Court McGee, and that's his cardio is elite. I mean, Court McGee's not going to stop for better or for worse, whether that's attempting takedowns or throwing strikes. That Court McGee can go a hard 15 minutes where in that type of an archetype of a fight, or I should say this one against McGee, on a guy who's going to throw as many strikes as he is and who potentially can wrestle. If that's McGee's game plan here, I'm not 100% sure, which we might get to a little bit. I don't know exactly what Wells' cardio dynamic looks like against that in both realms. I think there's a potential that Wells could gas out in that scenario. Obviously, the looming question on McGee is, can Wells knock him out? I do think it is a live outcome. How live is it? I guess is really where the fight comes down to in a lot of ways for me, because Court, at the end of the day, has still only been knocked out once in his pro career by Ponzinibbio, who is, at least statistically, one of the bigger hitters at 170 pounds historically. But Court McGee has also gotten hurt and dropped in multiple other fights recently, which I don't love as well. But is Jeremiah Wells going to go out there and out wrestle Court McGee? I mean, Sean Brady couldn't. I mean, even when Brady got to like back ride against him, he couldn't fit his second hook in. He couldn't get into dominant positions. And I rate Brady super strong. Not only is a physically strong guy, but a pretty strong wrestler and a pretty strong grappler, actually out of the same Renzo Gracie Philly gym as Jeremiah Wells, which I do think needs to be noted. But that's just always kind of the benchmark I use. You can go to 10 million other fights for Court McGee as well, who's fought good wrestlers, good grapplers as well. But I use that one because Sean Brady, one, it was in a relatively recent sample, only a couple of years ago. And Sean Brady's a top 10 guy now, at the weight class. And so if he wasn't able to do it, can Wells do it? I'm not really sure. We also haven't seen Wells aggressively, offensively wrestled much. He can be taken down, but he's often been able to scramble, reverse position. I mean, can he do that on Court McGee? If Court McGee takes a wrestle-heavy game plan, Claudio Silva couldn't. Ramiz Brahimaj couldn't, right? So you throw all these things into the soup, and it's like, how is this fight like pick 'em or close, really? Like, unless you think Jeremiah Wells is going to go out there and just kill Court in 5.5 to 7 minutes, that's really the only way this line is justified, in my opinion, because I think Court's a more consistent minute winner. He's got the defensive wrestling. He's got the defensive grappling. He's got the offensive wrestling. He's got the cardio. He's in the best physical shape of his entire career. Once again, 37 though, the shit can fall completely off, off a cliff at certain points. But Court's looked good recently, and I backed him big. I think you did as well, Lags, and maybe John.
Yeah,
I think we all backed Court in the last fight against Ramiz. So I'm going to probably continue to just ride the wave on Court until it falls off. Am I laying a ton of units on it? No, I think honestly I only have one because I still am concerned about him getting blasted in this fight, to be honest. But I think he's the side. What do you think, Legs?
I won't hash a ton of it because I'm also on the Court side as well. But I have a unit on Court -120. I have a unit on Court by decision at +175. To me, I think Wells, if he doesn't get him out of there in that first 5-7 minutes, I don't really see much of a path for him. It's just like, he's been 5 rounds before, but it's like the pace in that fight wasn't exactly high pace at all. Nothing the Court is really going to bring.
He didn't do anything, and he got pot-shotted for 25 minutes too.
Right. So it's like a guy in Court who's going to push a pace in your face nonstop. If he doesn't get nuked, I think this is Court's fight to lose personally. So I love Court on the money line. Court by decision +175. I think that's a crazy line. So I got 2 units on Court in total.
All right, Lou, tell us how much you bet on Jeremiah Wells.
So I should mention that that gym is 14-0 at the moment. I don't know if you are aware of that. They're about to go 14-1, unfortunately. But to me, the best way to bet it is live after round 1, because, and if Wells does go out there and blast them, you lose nothing. Like you don't miss the window there. But Wells is super athletic, and I think Wells is underrated on his feet. I don't know. I mean, McGee's a vet, and he's going to vet savvy him. And he's going to grind him against the cage as much as he can, and he's going to tire him out. And I actually think a draw is not a crazy play here. If McGee, because I think McGee could 10-8 him in the third. I think he could just sap Wells' tank. But Wells is going to be super dangerous in the first. And this is another one of these people. The money is just piling on McGee so much that it's this is just the gambling sense of 20 plus years being a gambler, where I get nervous when I see bets like this. I do think McGee's the side. I think he's I mean, on the ground, I don't think it's even going to be, Wells got to the ground because he like fell over against Blood Diamond. That's how he took it to the ground. He like fell on the cage and then and I don't know what to make of the Worley Alves fight. I mean, he just like Alves is, I don't rate him super high.
That was a caught kick takedown too.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I don't feel like he's shown a full skill set in the UFC. Like, and the Blood Diamond thing, like come on, man. Like that shouldn't have been a sanction. He shouldn't be like having these kind of fights. I just think McGee's so well rounded, and I think he knows how to pace himself. And I just don't know that Wells can blast him out of there. But I do think he can hurt him enough in the first, where maybe we're looking at plus 250 going into round 2. I mean,
interesting.
I think
it's possible.
I mean, I got it. Well, I also got to think like that Wells knows his best path to victory here is going to be round 1. Like, I mean, it's a good gym and they train people. Like, unlike Sean Brady, who is like a cardio like machine. Like, I don't know that Wells is built like that. And I think, you look at the people in that gym that are traditionally grapple heavy. I think Wells is one of the people in that gym that is more focused on being striking heavy, even if it's just being on the ground and striking. Where I just don't think that he's going to do enough to get McGee out of there in the first. And I think he's probably going to expend like 80% of his cardio. So I like the live bet spot. I do like Court McGee. Like you said, Luke, I'm nervous about that first round. But if you wanted to get a little crazy and play a draw here, I don't think it's a crazy move if you think McGee can 10-8 him in the third.
Wells is plus 500 round 1.
Yeah, and that's probably his winning condition. I don't see. I can't see him winning a decision here. I don't see a situation where he wins a decision. He could win in round 2. I mean, it's not like he could win at the beginning of round 2. So that's how he got Alves out of there. But I really think even at the end of the first round, we may start seeing maybe. I mean, like again, we're making a lot of assumption for somebody who's had, how much time has he had in a UFC cage? 6 minutes or 8 minutes, and 4 of them were against a bum. So I don't know. I'm leaning McGee. I do like the live bet spot the most out of all the plays, though.
Yeah, it could happen, though. I mean, it's definitely been betting against big, explosive, athletic people have burned me, multiple times, especially this year. I've gotten killed on it.
If you miss the window, and if you miss the window, you miss the window on it. Like if he does not, if he somehow gets McGee out of there in the first, you don't lose anything. You just get sad.
That's a good point. That's a good point. All right, let's move on to the next one. We got Adrian Yanez versus Tony Kelly. Legs, I know you have a bet here, so I'll let you kick this one off.
Yes, I will keep this one fairly short and sweet, but to me, I just feel like Tony Kelly can make this fairly competitive with his footwork, with his volume, and I just don't think that I like Yanez is a good striker. Don't get me wrong, good boxer, good combos in general, but I don't think the volume is great, and I don't think his defense is great. So I think if he doesn't knock Tony Kelly out early in this fight, I just think this is a competitive fight that ends up going 15 minutes. So I got a unit on Tony Kelly plus 290. I think he makes it a dog fight.
What do you think, Lou?
Oh, I probably have the most exposure on this one of any other fight. I have fight goes the distance at plus 110. They're both pretty durable. They both have horrible striking defense, which is a concern, but there's a universe where Randy Costa wins in round 1 against Yanez. He is a typically slow starter. And if you're basically spotting me around against a guy who knows going to come out aggressive, I got to take Tony Kelly. I have him by decision. And I gave you guys a plus 2,000 bet I like with the Yam Bag special. How about a plus 2,200 bet? Tony Kelly split decision is plus 2,200 in Texas, where we know we're going to get, if I think it's going the distance, and look, 9 out of 10 times I do think this is going the distance. I mean, how much is the crowd going to play into it? Could Yanez steal rounds with the crowd? We've seen it before. I mean, we just don't know. But I do think that Kelly more often than not gets the first, and then you just got to win 1 out of 2. I like Kelly's endurance. I mean, could he go to any grappling here? If he's getting rocked, I would imagine, right? But I don't know. This is a really this line is crazy wide for me. I think Yanez is like, I mean, all the talent in the world, he's going to have a power advantage, but it's that first round slow start that just you can't take him in a fight that I think Kelly can withstand 15 minutes. Like Yanez would have to win the second and third rounds. I don't want to hold a minus 300 ticket with that price in that situation.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't want the internet to hate me for not betting Adrian Yanez, since I know like 98. I mean, I get that people are rooting for Yanez. Like, I get it, but I'm here to make money.
Yeah, Lou, you're just getting mass unfollowed now for your shitty take on Tony Kelly.
I had a good run.
I'm just kidding. I'm gonna complete the trifecta. I'm right there with you guys. I think Tony Kelly is a decent look this week. I think there's quite a few things to unpack here. The first being that automatically you got a guy in Adrian Yanez who is a fan favorite, which is going to just be baked into his line to begin with. So you have to look at that in terms of how you're capping as well, and where the general public sentiment. People love Adrian Yanez, coupled with Tony Kelly saying the things that he did in the corner of his wife or girlfriend, Andrea Lee. I mean, people want Adrian Yanez to kill this guy this week. I mean, there's very heavy public sentiment that hates Tony Kelly this week. So I think that's just something to note off the top. But, you know, you guys broke it down pretty well too. Like, I like Yanez as much as a lot of people do in some capacities. Like, I think he's a pretty technical boxer. The guy hits hard, but the problem is he doesn't wrestle and he blocks punches with his face at the end of the day. And so when we're trying to analyze and look at these fights and try to assign what's value and what's not, it's like Tony Kelly's never been knocked out in his pro career. He's willing to push a consistent pace. I thought we saw him fight to a very intelligent game plan against Randy Costa. You know, your traditional first round big blitz power puncher archetype. What did he do? He went to the clinch. That shows me a ton of fight IQ in that fight. What did he do? Sapped his gas tank, slowed him down. Yeah, sure. Tony Kelly got controlled a bit himself, but nonetheless, Costa, he still made him engage in that. Obviously, he ended up hurting him to the body and ultimately finishing him in those positions as well. Historically, where Tony Kelly has struggled has been with his defensive wrestling, right? You know, his takedown defense isn't great. He's gotten stuck on bottom a little bit at points, but once again, Adrian Yanez does not wrestle. So I guess the question I would beg to people is that if Adrian Yanez does not knock out Tony Kelly in the first round, will you be happy holding a 78% implied Adrian Yanez ticket straight or in a parlay if this fight goes a full 15? The answer to that is probably no. You probably won't. I think Tony Kelly's a decent soldier, right? I don't think, you know, he's anything special, but he's battle tested. Like I said, he's got good cardio. He's going to throw a lot of strikes. Once again, his defense isn't great, which does leave me some pause. But once again, we're talking about a very big plus number, so you're going to have to concede, a thing or two here and there. I just think if the fight does get out of the first round, I think he can make it competitive, like I said, we saw, and get pieced up in the first by Randy Costa. We saw him go strike for strike with Davey Grant. The margins he won that fight by were incredibly small. The last three fights that have hit the cards for Adrian Yanez have all gone to split decision, which needs to be noted. Hashtag shout out Lou's split decision plus 2,200 Tony Kelly bet. I think that's probably one of the best DGen flyers of the card, actually, especially factoring in Texas. I'm going to see if I can find that somewhere, and I'm probably going to take that myself, once we hop off.
Betway, I know Betway and DraftKings offer those just in case anybody does feel like tailing it. I don't know what other books offer it, but Betway has, I think it's the same odds provider, so they have it as well. Gotcha.
So yeah, I mean, it's not a big play because once again, Yanez goes out here and dusts him. People come back and call us all a bunch of dummies, but it's like, at what percentage do you assign a Yanez knockout when that's pretty much the only way he maximizes his value on his line? It's like, I don't know. That's where my discrepancy is. And as a gambler, I think Tony Kelly is a good value based big flyer this week. So, all right, let's go to another fun fight. We got Julian Marquez taking on Grigory RoboCop Robama, Barack Obama. I don't know how many fucking nicknames this guy has. Rodriguez. I'll let you kick it off, Lou.
He looks like a lot of people.
I like
Obama. Depending on the angle.
That's a good one. I've never heard that. Robama. We're gonna stick with that one. I like it.
Kick us off, Lou.
Oh, I'm on the Marquez side. This is probably an unpopular take too. I'll say that we know he has great endurance. I don't know if I should say why, if this is a family programming, but if you know who he keeps company with in his life, you know the man has wonderful endurance. I don't like the long layoffs he's had in his career. Like, I know he got hurt, and like I can't read too much into like the Alvey win. Here's the big thing for me with this is that Rodriguez seems to be getting in, and we've seen this a lot with certain fighters over the years. Rodriguez is starting to get into crazy wars instead of taking the path of least resistance. The Petrosian fight was like, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm a fan, like I loved it. But even against the Iron Turtle, that fight was, I mean, he was like he was out, then he wasn't, then he was out. I mean, great fight, fun fight to watch, but we've seen this before when guys start getting into these like damaging firefights over and over and over again. It doesn't end well. And Marquez is a guy that he's going to be there in the third round if the fight stays standing. If it goes to the ground, it's not like Marquez is like helpless. The guy's got submission skills. He's not like, is he a better submission grappler here? No, but he's not helpless. But if this stays on the feet and Rodriguez gasses, and he did look kind of gassed against Petrosian, we know Marquez is going to be there in the third. And this dude hits like a truck. So I have the Marquez side. I have him in the distance because I don't see a situation. I don't see him winning a decision here. I don't see. I mean, I know Rodriguez is pretty tough to finish, but I just don't see how Marquez wins a decision. But I'm on his round 3 prop as well. Round 3 knockouts, 18-1. If it gets to the third and you're holding a Rodriguez ticket, it's going to be nerve wracking that especially if he hasn't gone for takedowns. If he is not attempting any takedowns, you're gonna be shitting yourself with this ticket. So I think the price is reasonable. I don't think I'm getting value on the Marquez side. I think it's lined reasonably right. But I like the durability of Marquez here to survive in a firefight against a guy who's showing maybe he can get popped easy, and that the third rounds of these fights, he's, it was just not a great look against Petrosian, like not attempting any takedowns and just getting blasted. So,
Legs, what do you got?
Yeah, to be honest with you, this is a tough one for me because I actually was going into it thinking that I actually like the under here, but I actually could see like a lot of like clinching up against the cage, and both of these guys are fairly tentative on the feet. Like there's a lot of like just inactivity, I should say. And so like I could see a scenario where it does go over, but another reason why I'm staying off that as well. It's like Marquez is a tough guy to finish, man. Even though as hittable as he is, he just seems to me super tough to finish. But on the Rodriguez side, the dude does not have great cardio, and the dude is super hittable as well. So under 2.5 rounds, minus 145 is my look here. But to me, I'm staying off the fight.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting one for me. I think Marquez is probably the money line side solely based on that I don't trust Gregory Rodriguez to fight to an intelligent game plan. If you told me that Rodriguez was going to fight to an intelligent game plan, I think he actually wins this fight at a pretty sizable clip because I think he's just a much more skilled fighter in a lot of capacities. But to Lou's point, Homeboy's shown that he's going to go out there and brawl at certain points. He got hurt against Park. We obviously saw him get knocked out back in the day. I think it was on Contender Series as well. He definitely ate some big shots against Petrosian. So yeah, I think Marquez is the side just based on the general knockout potential. If I was to bet the fight, though, I think I actually just would go with the over. I'm sorry, not the over, the under. I know that Marquez is durable, but he does eat a shitload of strikes, and Rodriguez hits hard. And at the end of the day, I cannot unsee Marquez getting his back taken by Darren Stewart, who is not a good grappler at all. He also got out wrestled by Maki Bitolo, who's a boxer, who's not a good wrestler. So it's like if Rodriguez comes up, once again, it's very hypothetical in terms of what game plan he does take. But if Rodriguez comes out here and wrestles and shoots takedowns, I know Marquez is out here subbing people, but he's not subbing good guys at all. And he's shown very poor defensive grappling tendencies against a much better submission grappler in Gregory Rodriguez, in my opinion. So if that is the game plan of Rodriguez, I think he's incredibly live to sub. I think we're going to get some big exchanges on the feet. Is it something I would load up on? Probably not, because there is definite 3-round war trap potential in that, and you are paying a little bit of juice for it. But I don't really just trust either guy personally. So I'd rather go with a violence-based total if I was going to do anything, because I will guarantee you we are going to see finishing sequences in this fight. But these guys aren't going to sit there and stare at each other for 15 minutes. I can guarantee that. So that's the route I would go personally.
Can I add something? Can I add something to that? By the way,
Yep.
I'm very upset we got deprived of Marquez against Jordan Wright, because I was really excited for Jordan Wright to just punch him for 8 minutes, and then just like Marquez do this once and unconscious, because that's how that fight was going. It's going to be.
I was
Jordan Wright.
Huge on the under in that. I think
it was going to. You know what was going to happen? 2 minutes and 40 seconds of the second was when that fight was going to end. Like, yeah. I just had this weird gut feeling it was going to go over 1.5, and we couldn't believe it. But Marquez would just throw one. He would throw no punches until, like, it would be like Homer Simpson, like, winning boxing fights. The dude just hits him like over and over and over again. He's like, push him over. Fight's done. I'm really upset we never got to see that fight.
Me too. That would have been a complete meme fest. But
oh my god.
All right, next fight we got a pretty high level one. We got Damir Ismagulov taking on Guram Kutataladze. I'm gonna fuck these guys' names up multiple times throughout this breakdown. Legs, what do you got, bro?
I don't really have a strong take here, because I like you topped it off with. This is a super high level technical fight, and I'm struggling really to see who has the edge here. I think Guram with the power shots could, sway the judges a little bit. But to me, I think Ismagulov is the much better striker here if this ends up going 15 minutes, which I think it does. And I think the fight goes the distance -175 isn't a bad look either. To me, I think Ismagulov by points. I think he's going to be able to land the jab, outside leg kick, keep it standing. I don't think he's going to be able to mix in the wrestling much at all. So, yeah, I think we just got a close fight that goes to the cards.
What do you got, Lou?
It's wild that you can get Damir at -150. I'm just going with first names, by the way. I won't fall into this trap. It's wild you can get him at -155, and his decision prop is +110. I mean, they already know. Honestly, this is your typical minute winner versus moment winner kind of fight. I think Guram's the moment winner. I think Damir can just piece him up. I think his wrestling defense is good. But right now, I have no bet on this. I will be betting after the weigh-in, because I need to see Damir on the scales. He was, I think, I may have the number wrong. He was 48 pounds overweight for his last fight, or 7.5, or somewhere in that range. But I mean, like, so badly overweight for that fight. That's a bad look. And it's one of those, like, I never like betting guys that, if this becomes a pattern, like, we just don't know. But I really need to see him on the scale before I have any action. But if he looks good, if he makes weight and he doesn't look emaciated, I'm big on the Damir side here. I know Guram's a really popular dog this week. I know he's got power shots. I realize that he trains with, Khamzat, and that's big for everybody, and I understand that. I just think this is going to stay on its feet 15 minutes, and it's going to be jab, 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 jab for 15 minutes. I do think Damir on points is the play. I would rather play him by money line in case you get some fluky thing, because you're only getting 60 cents difference between the money line and the decision prop. But I do think that's the outcome here more often than not. If you do like the Guram side, maybe take a shot at the finish, but I just don't think he's going to land enough shots. And with the layoff he's had, can I trust his cardio in the third? Like, Damir's looked really good, like, late in fights too. Like, I don't want to say really good. He looks like he's just getting warmed up when these fights start. So he's shown he can go a hard 15, no problem. So that's the side for me, but really way independent at this point.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you as well, Lou. I think it's actually a pretty decent spot for Ismagulov. I think there is a bit of recency bias going into this. We obviously saw, Ismagulov probably have his worst performance of his entire career in his last outing against Alves, despite winning a unanimous decision. Got dropped in the first, lost the third unanimously. And then we got homeboy Kutataladze, who won that decision over Gamrot, who everybody loves now as well. So you put those two things together, Homeboy's the public dog of the week. But I think when you really dig into this fight stylistically, honestly, I don't think it's that competitive. I think Demir's better than him everywhere. Personally, I think his range management is much better. His pace is much more consistent. His defense is much better. He's impossible to wrestle. He's impossible to hold down. He's never been submitted in his entire pro career, where Kutateladze is kind of your outside big body kick, big hook, Kutateladze tends to win moments or find knockouts, but he's not a consistent pace guy at all. And we have seen him hurt also on multiple occasions too, which needs to be noted. So I just think Demir's much crisper. I think he's the better fighter everywhere, and I've been saying it for the better part of the last 4 years that this guy's a top 15 guy at 155 pounds, and it's not something I'm going to waver off of until I see otherwise. Like I said, I know the last fight against Alves is a bit concerning, but there is under the context there. He was coming off a 2-year layoff, so there may have been a little bit of ring rust or so there in that fight, which needs to be noted. But we still have a pretty long sample size of the guy, at least 3 fights prior in the UFC and over in M1, where he's been fighting a pretty strong crop of talent over there. Former M1 champion as well. I just think the guy's the goods. Personally, and I just think there's heavy market over sentiment on Kutateladze. So I think Demir's actually a pretty decent spot, and I categorically disagree with the steam coming Kutateladze's way this week.
It's that video that came out of him, you see the video that Fitzgerald shared of him basically putting him in the darkest place possible. It's wildly entertaining as a video, but he puts himself in this super dark place to fight. And I think that people have seen that video and they're like, oh my God, he's a savage. I'm taking him. I honestly think that probably swung some people on that side.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Kutateladze is some bum or he's some bad fighter or anything. I think the guy's actually pretty decent. He's going to win a lot of fights in the UFC 100%. I just think it's a pretty bad style matchup for him at the end of the day against a pretty talented guy. But nonetheless, let's move on to our third fight of the main card. We got Joaquin Buckley taking on Albert Duraev. Lou, what do you got, bro?
I mean, this is one that pre-tape, I was like, well, Buckley's just going to knock him out. And then I got to the tapes and, I wasn't super impressed with Duraev last fight. I know he's been knocked out by Amiv. Maybe the less said about that, the better. But all 3 of his losses are by knockout. But the one thing is I think Buckley odds are Buckley's still getting love from the Impa knockout. I wasn't impressed with him with the Al Hassan fight. And one thing I noticed, and I remembered this live, but when I went back, I didn't realize just how bad it was. Al Hassan anytime he went for a trip, he took him down. I mean, I think 3 times in the 3rd round, trip, take him down. And this was supposed to be, Buckley implementing the wrestling game. So I don't, if this fight hits the ground once, I think it's over. So I'm on the Duraev side. I'm on Duraev in the distance. I think he could win by sub or ground and pound. I'd rather just play in the distance and not a method. But could Duraev do stupid shit here? Well, yeah. He could absolutely do stupid shit. And if this thing hits the 3rd round, it's going to be a little nervy. But if this hits the 3rd round, it's weird because Duraev really should just get him down within the first half, 30 seconds of this round and get him out of there. But I get the love for Buckley, especially because Duraev's the way he loses is by knockout. But I'm going to play Duraev in the distance. I do think he gets the early takedown and he mauls him.
Yeah, I think that's probably actually a decent look, to be honest. I've been a truther of Duraev, to be honest. I laid a very hefty number on him against homeboy Kopolov. Did I feel excellent about that hindsight? Not really. He obviously got dropped. He gassed in the fight. He did not shoot one takedown in the 1st round. So it was just, really not a great first performance for the guy, to be completely honest. But, if you go watch the large body of his career, the guy went a hard 5 rounds, back on the regionals, I think in ACA. So I more so attribute that to it being his debut. It was in Abu Dhabi. We know guys have had significant cardio issues over there before. Like I said, I've seen the guy go a hard 5 rounds, so I'm not really willing to say his cardio is bad by any means, just because I think there's more evidence out there to suggest that it's not. If anything, I would more question that the fight IQ, him not shooting a takedown in the first round of that fight against a kickboxer when he had clear ground-based advantages. And I'm not even saying that post-fight, I mean pre-fight. We all knew that he was a much better wrestler and a much better grappler than Kopylov. And then we obviously saw what transpired, in the second round when he was able to get him down, damn near finish the guy, and 10-8'd him, in my opinion. And what we have seen from Buckley, he hasn't been aggressively wrestled much, but he did fight Logan Storley back on the regionals, who we know is obviously a very highly credentialed, good wrestler. Got out wrestled there. Is Duraev on the pure wrestling pedigree of a Logan Storley? Probably not, but I don't think he's that far off, to be honest, at least in terms of MMA. His sambo is pretty good. What I will say, he's a much better submission grappler than Logan Storley is. And Lou brought up a great point. Him getting out wrestled and gassing in the third against Al Hassan, who's known to be a guy who only has 1 round of gas, is very disconcerting in this matchup against a guy in Duraev who I would say pushes an okay pace on the feet and who historically has been pretty consistent to wrestle. So if Duraev is not a dummy and doesn't decide to sit here and have a 15-minute range kickboxing match with Buckley, I think he takes him down and probably finishes him on the ground. Like I said, it's hard to say because the sample of Buckley on bottom is not large. He has not fought a lot of good grapplers either. So, I can't make any definitive claims about a finish, but I do think from a combination perspective of wrestler, grappler together, Duraev is the best wrestler grappler that he's fought to date. So I think we're going to get a lot of questions answered on Buckley on the ground, assuming Duraev sticks to his roots, goes to it. But if he decides to sit here and have a range kickboxing match with Buckley, he's not minus 200 in that fight. I'll tell you that right now. So to me, it comes down to Duraev fight IQ, which is why I'm not, willing to lay over minus 200 or so. But I don't hate your angle, Lou, on inside the distance. I think his sub is at plus 300 as well. So I'd probably more look to the prop route. What do you think, Legs?
So I will complete the trio. I also had money on Duraev in his last fight against homeboy Kopylov, and again was not feeling great after that fight ended. And so I guess sentiment kind of just low here again. I mean, kind of just rounding the trio off again. I think it's a good spot for Duraev. I think he should be able to get the takedowns. I think he can get a finish as well. It's just all comes down to that fight IQ. And for me, it's just more like a watching this fight kind of just like more of a sample size type of thing. Because just that last fight I thought was more of like a absolute home run for him and made it way, way closer than it needed to be. So.
All right, trifecta spot. The boys like Duraev here. All right, next fight we got the Dirty Bird, Mr. Tim Means taking on Kevin Holland. I'll kick this one off. Really weird fight because going into this one, I thought I would almost certainly be playing Tim Means as a decent-sized dog, just because the line was, pretty big. We have concerns with Kevin Holland in multiple capacities. Tim Means 3-fight win streak, despite being old. Guy keeps a pretty consistent work rate. He is a black belt in jiu-jitsu, I believe, as well, and pushes a very consistent pace and is difficult to outstrike in the aggregate. But it's kind of a spot thing for me, and why I think it's actually a decent spot for Holland. Means being that pressure forward boxer based guy, I don't think bodes well against a guy like Kevin Holland, who's very karate like in the darting in and out fast, power, sniper type of category. I think he's just going to walk into shots. I think there's a massive athleticism gap between him and Holland. So do I think that Tim Means can probably make this fight competitive early if he doesn't get sparked? Sure. I think that's actually probably what's going to happen, but I don't think he survives over the course of 15 minutes with Kevin Holland. Like I said, I think the athleticism gap is too big. The speed gap is too big, coupled with the fact of Holland, now fighting down at 170 pounds, which I've been just like yelling at the top of my lungs, like as to why have you not been dropping down to 170? Like the guy's audibly said that he could do it. And essentially he said, I was too lazy. I didn't want to cut the weight. That's why I was fighting at 185. And I think that is partially the reason why he's had some struggles on the ground in the past. He's been fighting bigger, stronger guys, but part of it too is he's acknowledged the fact that not only has his takedown defense not looked great, he's a guy who's accepted being on bottom. But when we've actually seen him in his last 2 fights, despite getting taken down 2 out of 3 times against Oliveira, popped up right away. I thought his takedown defense against Dawkins looked much better. So it does give me a decent degree of confidence that not only is Kevin Holland taking his career more seriously, given the fact that he's willing to cut the weight down to 170, but his takedown defense has improved, and he's not going to be a guy who's going to be willing to drop minutes on bottom anymore. I mean, Tim Means isn't not the most proactive wrestler, but he can wrestle. And, like I said, he is a black belt in jiu-jitsu. So that's why I still, despite all of that being said, I'm not willing to lay, an uber chalky number on Kevin Holland because, I mean, there are still some issues there over a large sample size. Like I said, I think he's corrected them. I think him going down to 170 is a good thing, but I still would like a bit longer of a sample before I'm, able to, plant my flag on that. And Kevin Holland's decision-making in fights isn't always great. So, but at the end of the day, I think he knocks out Tim Means. It's one of those fights where I think Tim Means actually looks okay until he does not look okay. And Kevin Holland knocks him out. So am I willing to, lay minus 300 on Kevin Holland? Probably not. But I do think his inside the distance line and KO prop is interesting as well. What do you think, Legs?
Yeah, I was just say kind of the opposite. As soon as you said when you saw the fight, you were looking at Tim Means. I was like, as soon as I saw the fight to me on the card, I was like, I think Kevin Holland's going to spark him instantly. And I was like, I think he's old. I think Tim is just old, slow, and I think Kevin is just that fast sniper, that powerful shots that'll be able to clip him. So I was looking for the KO prop, and I saw FanDuel had it at plus 260. I don't think that's bad. I don't have a plan on it at the moment, but yeah, to me, I think Kevin at some point does spark him.
What do you got, Lou?
I did see some people trying to play this Holland sub prop this week, but so I think Tapology is wrong. It says that he fights out of Fort Worth, Texas, but like if you've seen anything that Holland's done the last year, I'm pretty sure he lives in Gotham because like the dude's just like pulling people out of cars or like restaurants or supermarkets or airplanes like every 3 months. Like it's like, oh, Kevin, like local guy saves another 5 kids from drowning or whatever. So like, is karma a legit thing? I hope so. Like he should win. I love watching Holland. He's so much fun. Like, the problem is like Means has a very clear path to victory here. Like, could he just go the ground route 3 rounds? He has a vet savvy. Could he do it? He could, but he hasn't really, even against Mike Perry, like a fight that he just been like, no, I'm wrestling for 15. He just doesn't seem interested in doing it. He does like it in a firefights. Like you can't teach an old dog new tricks. So I like Holland by KO, and I like him round 2. I don't know why I like him round 2 so much. It did take him a little bit to get started against Oliveira. I do think Holland eventually does just touch his chin, and he doesn't need much of an opening to get a knockout at this point in his career against a guy with this much wear and tear.
All right. I think we're all on the same page here. And all right, let's go to the local bingo hall with our favorite senior citizens for the co-main event of the evening. We got Donald Cowboy Cerrone taking on Joe Lozon. Honestly, I don't really have much of an opinion here. These are fights that I just don't like to bet on, at least from a side perspective. Like I don't want to trust a side. I think both guys are very washed, obviously more so from a present perspective from the Cerrone side. But we just have not seen Joe Lozon in a second. So, I mean, who knows what Joe Lozon looks like at this point. My general breakdown is that Lozon, pretty strong starter. He's going to come out, throw his hands. We know Cerrone's a pretty slow starter, which is why I do think Lozon is live in this fight, right? Especially at this stage in his career. If Lozon comes out there and blasts him, I really wouldn't be shocked. But I do think the longer this fight goes, I do think it favors Cerrone, as he's just a much better technical kickboxer, coupled with the fact that, Lozon's actually a primarily jiu-jitsu based guy. Cerrone's incredibly difficult to take down. He's incredibly difficult to submit. I just don't see that. And I just think there's a decent athleticism edge for Cerrone in that regard. So I can see like I said, Lozon potentially finishing early, probably potentially late KO from Cerrone, or if not, Cerrone just on the cards doing more. But variance fight, in a lot of ways. So am I trying to lay chalk on Cowboy in 2022? I'd rather sit in a padded room and watch soccer personally. I know that was a little barb at you, Legs, because I know you're the soccer boy, but
he's not the only soccer fan on this.
We're outnumbering you
broadcast.
here, Lou.
But yeah, so it's a pass for me. But I think you do have a bet on this fight, Legs.
I do. So I have a bet on the fight doesn't go the distance here, minus 182, unit and a half. Fairly similar to how you broke it down. I think Joe's very live in that first round, and if he doesn't get it done in that first round, I think Cowboy's very live to finish him in the second and third round. And I guess the only thing that I'll really add to this is I couldn't tell you for the life of me why people are trying to play Lozon money line last time this fight was booked and are still trying to play Lozon money line now when you could play his KO round 1 at 10-1. Given that's basically his win condition, I don't really see how he could. I mean, I guess theoretically, Cowboy's fairly washed himself, but like from what we've seen from Lozon, large sample size, I think you should be betting that round 1 KO at 10-1 versus the money line at plus 130. So
he could club and sub Cerrone.
All right, so okay, round 1 is 6-1.
I'd rather do that personally.
But fair. Again, 6-1 versus plus 130. So
all right, Lou.
Yep.
How much you got on Lozon?
I do have a poke on the round 1 Lozon prop. I actually debated doing Cerrone round 2 KO to back it up, but I don't really. I tend not. I mean, I still may, but I really just think Lozon gets mad there in 3 minutes. But fight doesn't start round 3 is minus 112 on FanDuel. That's my favorite play. That was my heaviest play weeks ago. That was the John Kelly play, and then it got canceled. And I'm like, all right, that's a push. So I was going to give it away this week, and then he's not doing the show, so I guess I'm never getting this bet on the show. But I think the minus 112 at fight doesn't start round 3. If it gets to the third round, I guess you'd favor Cerrone at that spot. It'd probably be 1-1, but it's got to be. I see violence here, and honestly, from everything I'm reading, I don't know how seriously Cerrone's taking this fight. I feel like this may just be a paycheck. I don't know how much crow's milk he drank last time from the It's Always Sunny boys that he was throwing up and having stomach issues, but I don't really think he's coming in here. I think this is probably the last we're going to see of him. It's sad. He's one of my favorite guys to watch. Used to be a guy that used to fight for your money so hard. Now it's just the body just gave up. Like it happens, and too many wars in too short of a time. So Lozon round 1's a great play. And I do agree with the plus 600 and not going to the KO route. I do think there's a couple of ways he could get him out of here, but fight doesn't start round 3 seems the safest route to go here, and you get both sides covered.
All right. Despite all the jokes, what I will say though, both these guys are legends. I'm happy they're at least booking them that way. I just hate when they book like the over the hill guy against like the uber young buck. It's like, what are we doing, guy? You're trying to give the poor dude some more CTE or some bullshit like that. It's like at least match make people, kind of where they're at in their careers. So if they're going to do it, I still kind of disagree with these type of bookings personally, but if they're going to do it, I think this is how they should book them. So nonetheless, props to both guys, but I don't think we're going to see them for much longer. All right. So we got 13 fights through. On to the main event. We got Calvin Kattar versus Josh Emmett. This one should be a banger. I don't know how this would be boring. We have seen that with a couple main events, Santos, Walker. Hopefully we don't get no bullshit here. But yeah, this should be a fun one. Lou, I'll let you kick it off.
I mean, I realize that Emmett's live to smoke him with 1 or 2 big shots, but I just don't see it here. I think this is going to be Kattar, just 25 minutes of volume. I think he's live for a late finish, to be honest. I think if the volume does pile up, Emmett's, he looked great against the Burgos. That was an interesting fight because, of the kind of war it was, but I just don't, Emmett's not hittable, or Kattar's not hittable like that. I think I get it. Like he got hit a lot in one fight. Like I get it. I understand. But traditionally with him, he's good at deflecting shots. He's good at his volume is great. I do think he just wears them out. I know a lot of people are on that 4-5 decision look on FanDuel, and I looked at that too. But I think he's a decent parlay piece. I do like the 4-5 decision because I think he's live for a round 4, round 5 KO. But there's another interesting way if you want to play this. I know that like if you're looking for like you want to throw him in a lot of parlays, if he is parlayable to you with these odds, I don't see Emmett winning a decision. Emmett's only path to victory is that knockout shot. So if you do have Kattar in a lot of parlays, backing it up with the Emmett KO, just to kind of hedge out of that, I think is a decent look at it. But I just, other than a lucky shot, I don't see how this is in 25 minutes. It just total volume and one-sided from the Kattar side.
All right, yeah, I would say probably a bit of disagreement on my part. I definitely hear that notion, which is why I would still favor Kattar because obviously his pacing, his volume is much more consistent. I think he's the better technical boxer than Josh Emmett, but Josh Emmett not only has like the nuclear option of landing 2.1 knockdowns per 15 minutes, which is number one in terms of active featherweights. That's more than like your average, not even your average, your top 10 heavyweight. Just shows you how many knockdowns this guy's landing per 15 minutes. If there is a guy to put down Calvin Kattar out there, it's Josh Emmett. So I do think his power from some capacity is being slightly underrated in the sense that we know Calvin as this incredibly durable guy, which I don't disagree with. He obviously is. He's proven that on multiple occasions. But if there is a guy to go out there and put Calvin Kattar down and make him pay for some of his poor defensive tendencies, it sure as shit is Josh Emmett. And I do think Josh Emmett can actually compete standing here. The problem is I don't know if he can consistently over the course of 25 minutes. And that's where my issue is. But I also don't think the power dynamic here is one-sided towards Emmett at all. I mean, Kattar can crack. And we have seen Josh Emmett obviously knocked out before too. So I'm not saying it's like, oh, it's either Emmett KO or just Kattar decision. Not at all. Kattar could definitely knock out Josh Emmett, but I do think his defensive capabilities are actually a bit better. And it's just based on like the style of how both guys fight, where Kattar's kind of more of your like bouncing, like lip of the pocket guy, where Emmett is more of your lateral outside blitz striker. So in a lot of ways, he can kind of limit some of those exchanges. Obviously against Burgos, they got into a complete war. Burgos is very high output, but you also have to remember that Josh Emmett blew his knee out in that first round too, which I do think limited some of his more general movement patterns. And he just kind of said, fuck it, he was going to throw. The guy still won the fight at the end of the day on one knee over a guy like Shane Burgos, which I don't think can be completely ignored at all either. So I actually do think the line is a bit wide. I'm actually considering taking a pop on Emmett myself. I do think Kattar should be favored. Should he be 70% in this fight? I'm not sure. Coupled with the fact that, Josh Emmett historically has been an incredibly undervalued underdog. He's been an underdog in 5 of his 10 UFC fights, and he's 4-1 at the end of the day. So if you've been betting Josh Emmett over the years, the guy's a cash cow, 100%. I would be more inclined to back Emmett in a 3-round fight, but it is a 25-minute fight, and I do think the 25-minute dynamic does favor Kattar. So how much value is on Emmett is where I'm still really struggling, which is why I might not even make a play on him at all. But I do think Calvin deserves to be the favorite in this spot. What do you think, Legs?
I would say I'm somewhere in between the middle of you guys, in between on the Calvin side. I think to me, if this fight goes, extended minutes, I do think Calvin is going to be the winner more often than not. I do think Emmett largely does need that knockout to compete here. And yeah, so to me, I think the line is more so right. I think maybe a tad bit wide on the Kattar side, but yeah, I like Calvin a good bit in this spot.
All right. So I think we largely agreed on most stuff here. Obviously, we had a ton of pretty big favorites. So not a ton of close lines where we got a ton of back and forth necessarily. But all right, guys, that's going to do it. We chopped through the solid 14 fight card, solid main event with Calvin Kattar and Josh Emmett. Went about an hour and a half or so. Appreciate the 35 live viewers we have in the chat. Once again, podcast brought you guys by betonline.ag. Use promo code CLUBSUB, best book out there on the market for MMA. Wanted to give a shout out to our boy Lou Betya, who is joining us for tonight and filling in for my boy John. He'll be on next week. Lou, I'm going to give you the floor, plugs, shout outs, anything like that. Thanks for coming on, bro.
Thanks for having me. I do enjoy talking to you guys, breaking down these fights. Danny and I usually talk about soccer because,
Yes.
because soccer's a real thing, Luke. Like people
Yeah.
actually like that sport. But
We don't watch it in padded rooms.
shout out to the MMA Engine guys I work with, Brady, Wheezy, Monk. Our channel just hit 1,000 so we thank everybody that was a part of that, and got really cool stuff coming down the pipe. I'm the only programmer, so hopefully I can get through some of these bugs and get out of here. But I have 2 shows tomorrow on our channel, and I'm a little different. I love doing props, if you haven't noticed. So if you like a little different, high risk approach to your betting style, check me out. And I will be drinking a beer out of a shoebox tomorrow. I had a shoey bet. It's the first time anybody ever made me a shoey bet, and I won. But I feel like I shouldn't be deprived of the beer, so I'm going to drink out of a shoebox, which I feel like is far more hygienic. And Eric Betts Fights already made me. He already made me graphics for it, so I will be drinking a beer out of a shoebox. I feel like nobody's done that yet. I got to beat Ben the Bane Davis before he just decides he's going to do that. So I got to have one original thing.
All right, so essentially, I'll speak for Lou, and what I'll say is follow Lou, check out the boys on MMA Engine for sure. You're definitely going to get some high quality content. Not too many boys out there going to be drinking from boxes out here, so you got to check my boy out 100%. As always, it's me, Luke at SWR_betting. Shoot me a follow on Twitter, and Danny_lags. As always, we will be back providing you guys the content as well next week, breaking down these fights. Thanks for hanging out, guys. We will see you next week. Peace.